You are listening to Topic Paranormal with your host, Georgina Holzmeyer, and the Paranormal Brain Trust, Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa. Topic Paranormal covers Paranormal Talk, Paranormal Tales, Paranormal Training, and so much more. Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts. And now, your host, Georgina Holzmeyer.
Well, hello and welcome to Topic Paranormal. Hey, today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the equipment that we use while we're doing our paranormal investigations, our ghost hunting. Our main point will be basically you don't have to spend a lot of money to do this. And tonight I have Nick Landy and Robert M. Brown joining me from the Paranormal Brain Trust. They're going to help me discuss a little bit of this technology with you. Say hello, guys.
Hello. Good evening.
All right. And so basically, I know a lot of our audience and listeners have heard about EMF detectors, periscopes, REM pods. That's a lot of terminology that if you're not familiar with ghost hunting or paranormal investigation, that can be confusing. So one of the things we're going to cover tonight is basically what equipment we use, what it detects, how it tells us what's going on, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the history as well. In fact, I have some interesting stories from as early as 700 AD and the 1930s on ghost hunting. But let's go ahead and get started with, let's talk a little bit about some of our early ghost hunters and what their equipment kits looked like. Elliot O'Donnell, for instance, he was considered a paranormal fiction author. Now, most of his stories centered around what he claimed were his personal experiences. And if you're familiar at all with paranormal investigation, if you've listened to any of us talk about personal experiences, it's very hard to validate some of those personal experiences. And so that's the reason he's considered a fiction author versus an actual paranormal real-time story author. Okay. And basically he carried a candle and of course matches to light those candles, a pencil, a notebook, a revolver, and a hip flask. Okay. I didn't ever really find some good information on what's in that hip flask, but I would bet it wasn't water back in those days. Let's see, another one of our popular ghost hunters would be Andrew Green. And you may have heard him referred to as the Spectre Inspector. And basically, he carried a shorthand notebook. He preferred the ease of flipping that notebook versus the horizontal versus vertical aspect of it. I thought it was interesting. He felt like that was important enough to bring up in his choice of notebooks. And of course, he had a pen and a measuring tape, which I found a little interesting. We'll talk about that a bit more here in a moment. There is a group out there that's been around for a long, long time called the Ghost Club. And they actually have a board of directors, if you will. And a couple of those chairmen were Tom Parrott, maybe Perot, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, and Alan Murdray. And their very, very simple basic kit included a pencil, paper, and a sympathetic ear. Interesting that they both felt that way. I'm beginning to believe that that was kind of a the Ghost Club requirement, for instance. And of course, my all-time favorite, Hans Holzer, who is a parapsychologist, just recently passed away more or less in the last 10 years or so. He felt like you had to have a trance medium, a pencil, a notebook, and occasionally a camera. Once again, he was very much into interpreting what he personally was feeling. And it's interesting, he used the word trance medium. He felt like it was very important to have an individual that had the ability to basically go into a trance and allow the spirit to speak through them using their vocal cords and their physical body to relay that message. I don't know how basic that really is. What about you, Robert? Would you consider that a basic requirement of having a trance medium available?
Well, it seems difficult to be able to organize having a trance medium with you everywhere you go. And I don't know if have you seen the new show on TV, on the Travel Channel, Holzer Files?
I have not had a chance to see those yet.
Okay. I just recently had recorded a few episodes and was watching it. And the premise to the TV show is it's his daughter who, of course, inherited all of his files. And he has a lot of audio tapes, apparently. And that's one that you didn't have written down. He used a reel-to-reel audio recorder,
Correct.
and he would record himself in the trance medium speaking. And the interesting thing on the show is that they're supposedly playing the actual audio from the investigations. And so the new paranormal investigators will take his files and his audio tape and go to the same locations that he was investigating and continue the investigations based on his notes. And so that's the premise, and it's kind of interesting. I like it because they don't have a lot of reenactment, and that's one thing in those shows that I can't stand is reenactments. That's sign to me that they're trying to fill space, and this is not too great. But anyway, the show so far is kind of interesting. But yeah, basically they show pictures of him with the trance mediums and then play the audio recordings, and he's sitting there just asking questions and letting the trance mediums do their thing, basically. And yeah, anyway, I would say that, yes, that's a very basic way of doing it with the audio recorder. Of course, the notebook, he had extensive notes. And so far they haven't gotten into any motion pictures yet, but I think he might have taken motion pictures as well.
Oh, cool. I can't wait to see a couple of those episodes. That's really interesting that they go back and revisit some of those locations. But okay, I will end up in a rabbit hole if I keep going that direction. So maybe I'll make a note. That is definitely going to be a future episode. Just a warning to our listeners, you're going to hear a lot about Hans Holzer, Andrew Green, and some of these older ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. This field is not new. It has been around for a while, so it's really interesting to see the development of the technology and things that have happened along those lines in this time frame. But like I said, we're trying to keep it basic, okay? Like we said, you don't have to have a lot of money. And I feel like probably if I were going to make up an absolutely necessary equipment list, it's very small, actually. I do feel like you need a flashlight, because 90% of the time it's going to be dark. Even during the daylight, you get into a basement or some of those lower level floors or a large building, those interior rooms can be very dark. So you're always going to want a flashlight. And then, of course, I need you to have an open mind and a positive attitude and batteries for that flashlight. And that's basically it. If you have those three things, I think you can do a paranormal investigation. Would you agree with that, Nick?
Yes, those three things, definitely pretty much all you need to get started with. Flashlight, very important. And I know a lot of people these days tend to use their cell phone as their flashlight and their audio recorder and camera and so forth. So I would definitely say a necessity to add to your kit would be a cell phone charger and a backup battery pack if you're going to be somewhere where electricity is not available for you to charge yourself.
Oh, excellent, excellent point, for sure there. Those backup battery packs can be very useful for continuing an investigation, especially if you're in some of the rural areas. They don't always have an electrical outlet in some of the places that I've been. So that's a good, excellent point there. The next step, I would say, bringing us up to like what I call basically a basic kit, I would add a camera and a voice recorder, as well as a pen and a notebook. And then at that point, we're dealing with batteries in various sizes, not just for your flashlight. You're going to want something for your voice recorder as well. So that's kind of a basic kit. Would y'all add anything to that necessarily?
I like, I found, I don't know how prevalent Harbor Freight is around the country. I haven't paid any attention, but they've started to sell black lights. And so they have a little, like a little flashlight size black light, and they're selling it. If you're looking for, it'll show things that phosphoresce, like scorpion, or if you like to go mineral and rock hunting, you can use these lights to find rocks that glow under dark light. I like to use those as just a regular flashlight because I can just with them, and it also doesn't blind everybody else, in the group.
Right.
Right. In fact, I'm really thankful that you brought that up. One of my favorites is a flashlight with a blue light for that very reason. I don't want to blind anybody accidentally, and I don't want to lose my night vision when I'm actually doing an investigation. Those are things that can definitely kind of screw it up for you. People with headlamps, that's always interesting. They generally blind me very quickly, especially with these new LED lights. So that's a wonderful little, hey, keep this in mind when you're looking at adding lighting to your kits, is do something that's not going to necessarily blind the people that are with you. And this looks like an excellent point in time to actually move into commercial break. So we will do that right now, and we will be back in just a few minutes. Hey, thanks for sticking with us here at Topic Paranormal. We're going to pick up our conversation now with Nick Landy and Robert Brown, a couple of members of our Paranormal Brain Trust. And we're going to pick up with cameras. Let's talk a little bit about cameras that you might want to include in your ghost hunting kit. And once again, our focus is doing this as economically as you possibly can. If you can do it at a higher technology level, a more expensive level, go for it. But for those that can't quite reach that level, here are some very productive alternatives. For instance, probably the number one camera I see used on paranormal investigations is a cell phone camera. What do y'all think? Nick, Robert, would you agree with that one?
I would agree with that one. I mean, the cell phone camera is pretty basic as far as just everyday normal life. These days, you're going to use it for everything. People do use it for everything, and paranormal investigating is no exception. I use it all the time. I feel like I get good shots and I get good video from time to time. Hell, my cell phone camera sometimes works better than my actual cameras do in some cases. One thing I would say to be careful of, I will caution people on this, is the cell phone camera, especially on iPhone, has a tendency to reflect a green orb
Yes.
in some pictures and in some video. And sometimes it can seem like that orb is dancing around and that you're following that orb, in which case you're not. It's just a reflection from the sun or from the light in the facility you're at, causing that green glare, that green dancing orb. So you have to be very careful with that. You're not actually catching an orb. I mean, put your camera down on your cell phone. See if you're seeing that green orb with your naked eye. If you're not, it's more than likely the reflection coming in on the camera.
Yeah, it's the sun, or it's called a lens flare. When the sun or another light comes in and reflects off of the external or internal lens of the cameras, especially if you're using an old school 35 millimeter type with the detachable lenses, those get really bad with lens flares. You got to watch out for that.
One of the things I found in researching some of those orbs that Nick mentions and the lens flare that you're talking about, Robert, is due to the shortness of the covering on that lens on the cell phones, which was interesting. I had never thought about that before, but basically, since there's not like a shade over that lens cover, the sun's hitting that directly, and because it is a round hole basically in your cell phone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, a Galaxy, whatever, that's part of what projects that round orb shape. So definitely something to be aware of when you're looking at those cell phone videos or phones. Photos, that's what I'm trying to say. Good Lord. Anyway, that is something that you will see a lot in some of the Facebook pages and groups, etc. They'll share those photos. Is this paranormal? And in reality, it's not, once you delve into it and find out that it was actually a cell phone video or a cell phone photo. So keep that in mind. I personally use a 35 millimeter. Mine happens to be a Nikon Coolpix L340 version. And it's interesting, Nick, that you brought up the fact that your cell phone actually works better, in your opinion, than a regular camera. I find that to be true. Over my 6 or 7 years I've been doing this, most people that I've talked with that use the 35 millimeter professional type cameras actually don't capture as much paranormal photographic evidence as you do with your cell phone.
Right.
I'm wondering if there's actually a kind of a technological explanation for that. So that's another rabbit hole of research. Now, is that something y'all have noticed as well?
No, you're saying you think that people who use 35 millimeter or another type of digital camera are catching less anomalies than when they use their iPhones or cell phones?
Yes. That's been my experience so far.
Okay. I've not witnessed that, but it's interesting. I've not heard that.
I think it depends on the manufacturer of the camera too, and the type of camera they're using. I too use a camera on the side that's not my cell phone. I want to say mine is a Nikon as well. With my Nikon, I tend to capture more lens flares and more orbs that are not actually orbs. They're bugs or dirt or dust or whatever, just a light flare. With my cell phone, I capture less of those anomalies coming across the screen.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
you're catching more trash with the
I'm
Nikon.
catching more trash with the Nikon. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I think that's another topic for one of our topic paranormal episodes. I'm going to have to find us a camera / photographic evidence expert. Okay, definitely. And of course, one of my favorites, and I know you both know this, is my game trail camera. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I love
both of
those
y'all
too.
actually use those as well, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like to use the game trail cameras better than I do a regular camera because you can set them up anywhere and then come back later and review. I personally, when I'm doing an investigation, I just like to go experience the environment and make mental notes. I don't like to be distracted by, taking pictures and reading EMF readings and all that stuff. I like to just sort of take in the atmosphere, and if I witness something, then it's usually it's audible. And I always make the mistake of not turning on a recorder or whatever, but that's just my own personal preference. I just like to investigate, and if I hear something or see something, then it's my own personal experience. And I know that's bad for research, but maybe I'll get better someday.
We all have our little quirks, Rob. It's okay. It's all right, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, and one of the things I do like about Robert's camera is, if I remember correctly, yours is the one with the Wi-Fi feed. So when it snaps a picture, it actually sends it to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I forgot the name of the manufacturer, but it wasn't a very expensive game trail camera, but it comes with free Wi-Fi, basically, or not Wi-Fi, but cellular service. It'll hook up to, it hooks up to Sprint cellular service no matter where you are, if it can connect. And for free, it will send you 20 images a month. But if you want to pay a monthly subscription, it'll send you unlimited photos. So you can leave it in a remote destination 200 miles away and continue to receive photographs when they're caught on the game trail camera, forever until the batteries run out. So I thought that was interesting. If I ever had an opportunity to leave it somewhere, which I have done, I've left it down here at the Palace Theater. Unfortunately not caught anything paranormal. I've caught people, when someone's touring the facility, they went to a location they shouldn't have gone into. And so I know when I have certain volunteers who are letting guests go places they shouldn't go. So,
right.
Well, we've got an instance now where we've got a light that's coming on, in a utility room, and we can't figure it out. We'll come down here and that light will be on, and we know we've turned it on. So we're trying to debunk that right now, and I've left the trail cam down here for that. Haven't caught anything yet, but so that's the best use for something like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
I like to leave my trail cam on the stage, backstage, especially. Just something about that backstage area. As you know, you've been down here and investigated many times.
Yes.
And the stage is very active for us, but there's been instances where I've left the trail cam up there, and you know how a trail cam works. It has to have movement in front of it, or the camera itself has to move for it to take a picture.
Definitely. And that's one of the things I like about the trail cam, quite honestly, is it is motion activated. It is IR. I can set it up either video, or I can set it up to the number of frames within a particular, I think it's like 5.5 second time frame. Mm-hmm. And I love that aspect of mine. Mine happens to be a Browning. In fact, that was an interesting conversation. As a lot of people know, I hunt. I love to hunt, whether it's birds or white-tailed deer. I like to hunt. And so one of the things that we like to do along those lines is attend the Hunters Extravaganza every year. And this is like a big showcase convention type thing where all the latest and greatest technology for hunting is available, the newest feeders, the newest blinds, things like that. And we happened to walk by the Browning, people had a booth set up, and I'm just picking up a little bit more information since that happens to be the brand of the camera that I use, the trail cam. And of course, I'm just being my normal polite self, but my children are with me. Okay, my children are adults, by the way. It's not like they're 9 and 10. They're actually 31 and 24. And I'm talking to, the guy's doing his salesman thing, telling me about this, and that feature. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I have one. I really like it. I like the reliability. We're talking about some of the features. And then my oldest one steps up and says, yeah, Mom, go ahead. Tell him, how do you use that camera? And of course, I gave him the death glare. And of course, the sales guy is like, oh, so how do you use it then? Are you not using it, to like locate your white-tailed deer, etc.? And I'm like, well, actually, no. I use it for ghost hunting. And seriously, the guy took like 3 or 4 steps backwards and went, oh, that's really interesting. So I think obviously for him, it was the first time he had heard of the fact that trail cams are a thing when it comes to ghost hunting. One of those interesting little parallels in my life.
Oh yeah. You hunt all the time. I don't hunt at all. So when I go into a sports and outdoor store looking for trail cams, and I have to go over there and ask them, and they ask me what I'm using it for, and I tell them, and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't know how to help you there. I don't know what's going to. I know what can help you catch a deer, but not the Wolfman or Bigfoot or whatever." So.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to move into another commercial break here, and we'll be back in just a moment. And thank you for hanging with us. Hey, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. It is really getting interesting at this point. We've talked a little bit so far about what we feel like is absolutely necessary equipment, and basically that's a flashlight, having an open mind, positive attitude, and the batteries to replenish that flashlight. And then we moved into the basic kit: a camera, a voice recorder with a pen, a notebook, and a variety of sizes on your batteries there to accommodate whatever type of camera you're using, and a voice recorder, etc. So now let's move into a conversation about cameras. Oh my God, there are like 6 gazillion different varieties out there. I'm not a very technical person, which it doesn't take you very long as a listener to figure that out. So let's talk a little bit about what some of these different cameras pick up on. You can purchase a full spectrum, you can purchase an infrared, you can purchase attachments that pick up particular ultraviolet rays, blah, 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 blah. So basically, the overall description of a full spectrum camera, basically full spectrum means that it covers the electromagnetic spectrum from infrared to near ultraviolet. So basically that's kind of like all wavelengths, but I think Robert Brown can probably speak a little better to that than I can. Robert, do you mind talking about that aspect of these cameras?
Well, let's see. I don't know that I can technically. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start.
You stumped Robert Brown. I just want you to know that I've never heard him be this quiet about a subject in my life. I've known the man for 20 years.
I don't know where I want to really start with this. I'm not an expert in full spectrum, but what I did was I got when they started becoming more popular within the paranormal field, and basically the way that I see them as tools is that they are able to pick up on a full spectrum of frequencies, light, whatever, however you want to describe it, just in case that becomes a helpful tool to see any of the anomalies that we're trying to pick up as we're doing our investigations. I noticed that they're pretty darn expensive if you want, a real good one that's made as a full spectrum camera.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got people on our team that have some. So I started doing some research on, actually how you can make your own. And so I'm going to pass this information on to everybody in case they're interested in they like DIY projects.
Awesome.
So I had it. Yeah. So since I started using my cell phone pretty much for all the pictures that I might take, I had a few old digital cameras that were pretty low resolution. They weren't going to be good for much of anything. So I thought I would experiment with this. And I just looked it up on YouTube, and there's plenty of videos out there showing you how to turn a regular digital camera into a full spectrum camera. And you can do it with any digital camera. It just depends on how difficult it is to get into the inner workings of it. The one that I was working on was so complicated that I almost couldn't put it back together. So what you'll see on some of the more popular ghost hunting equipment websites is they've picked specific brands and models of digital cameras to modify because those are easier to modify. And here's the secret. You pop off the front cover of the camera, and in front of the lens of the camera, before the light hits the digital chip that captures the image, there is a blue filter. It's a blue glass filter. You remove that blue glass filter, and you've just turned any digital camera into a full spectrum camera, because the digital chips in those cameras are so sensitive, they will capture all light, all frequencies, all everything. And so they have to put that blue piece of glass filter in front of the chip in all of these digital cameras to make them not full spectrum. So they're all full spectrum by default. They have to modify them, make them not full spectrum, so that we just a normal picture like we see, through our eyes. So that's the secret. You can go buy a used one on eBay cheap, get it in, and pop that blue filter out. And if you're handy with a tiny little screwdriver, go for it, because it's pretty easy to do when you get the right model that's easy to actually modify. And again, just go on YouTube and do a search for it, and you'll find the specific models that are easy to do that with.
Beats the hell out of spending $600 or $700 on a camera, doesn't it?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've also got a still camera, and then some of them take video too. So then you might have a full spectrum video camera, which is interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's my tip for the day.
Thank you, Robert, for that tip. Hey, we're all about saving a little cash here and there, right? Let's see. Oh, another popular one is the infrared IR, camera or lens or light attachment. I've seen this actually come in a variety of ways. You can actually purchase a camera that's already like infrared IR enabled, for lack of a better word, or you can actually purchase attachments that you can attach to your camera or your phone camera even, and it puts out the light to make that an infrared camera. Okay, so I had to look that up, and basically the infrared thing it's a radiant energy that's basically invisible to the human eye. On the extreme end of the near infrared spectrum, it feels like heat. Okay, so you can actually feel a temperature change there. On the low end, it's more like your TV remote. Okay, so think about that for a second. The low end of infrared is like the little radiant energy that your TV remote puts out to change a channel. The high end is more like a microwave to boil that cup of water in a minute and a half. Okay? Yeah. Okay, there you go. That's how that works. Basically, it turns out red when I'm looking at cameras that have used that IR. I haven't used that a whole lot. Now, Nick or Robert, have either one of y'all used the IR aspect of camera attachments?
No, I can't actually say that I've used IR at all.
Nope.
No.
I
Okay.
I haven't. No, the only thing that I would have used that utilized it would be the trail cams.
Right.
Oh,
because
that's
they're
true.
using-
That is true.
Right.
They're
yeah.
using that to take the night vision images. So basically, a night vision image is using IR to capture the image. So, yeah, technically we do, but not on any other kind of a specialty camera or anything like that.
Okay. See, that's how low tech I truly am. I didn't even realize that my game trail camera, which is basically a night vision capability, is using that infrared technology in order to do that. Okay, cool. See, I even learned something tonight. Yay!
The same thing with motion detectors too. So that's the way that they're detecting motion is with an IR sensor, an IR light and sensor to realize that something's moving across the sensor.
So is
So
that
it's
kind of
the
a
same-
temperature change thing that's keying that, you think?
No, I think it's motion. And so it has an IR light that you can't see, and it's able to detect the motion, and then it makes a noise, basically. So
Okay.
instead of taking a picture, it's making an alarm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Or
cool.
like your outside security lights on your house, you'll have an IR light motion detector on them, and then if something goes in front of it, then it turns the lights on. So that's how that's working. Same technology.
All right. I feel totally
making
dumb
notes.
right now.
I can hear you making notes.
Scribbling away on
I
her
am.
little pad
I
there.
am definitely. Y'all know that's like another a full Saturday investigation of what the hell is motion detection and IR. Okay, good deal.
Right.
So all right, so that gives you a little bit on the cameras. You're going to see these options if you're looking to buy these as a new investigator. So we're just wanting to provide you with as much information as we possibly can, so that you're making a decision that fits what you want to do with it. Okay, so there you go. Voice recorders. Oh my gosh, voice recorders.
Oh, yes.
I can't tell you how many hours and hours and hours I have listened to my recordings to see if I actually captured an EVP, which is that electronic voice phenomena, a voice that appears and is audible on your recording, but necessarily you didn't hear it in person. I love mine. I have two. I use them all the time. I do use them a little more sparingly than I used to, though. I will admit I've gotten a little lazy with that. Do y'all have any recommendations on voice recorders?
That would be a place where I would say don't cheap out. The more expensive ones are going to pick up a higher frequency range, so they're going to be able to pick up higher frequencies and lower frequencies, and so you've got an opportunity to pick up more information. I'm actually going to invest in an old reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Awesome.
Old school, but a good one, a good quality one, like a Marantz that they would use to record dialogue while they're filming a movie or something. They used to use reel-to-reel. Now they've gone digital. And I'm going to start some experiments with putting a digital recorder next to the reel-to-reel, record the same environment, and then listen back to both and see if there is actual difference in capturing something digitally as opposed to more analog onto the magnetic tape. I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay, that's like, oh my God, I've got so many rabbit holes just from this one conversation tonight. Because I can't wait.
Voice
Okay.
recorders.
Yeah, that is definitely a tab worthy of research and experiment in the future for sure. And darn it, here we go again. We got to launch into a commercial break right at a moment that piques my interest. So hang around. We're going to get into some even more interesting topics here in just a moment. Hey, thank y'all for hanging with us. I promise you it's actually going to get even more exciting. Hoping that you're finding this information helpful. Please take a moment when you get a chance. Go to our Facebook page, Topic Paranormal, and leave us a little feedback. How about a review if you're enjoying the show? Maybe you've got some equipment that you like to use that we haven't discussed tonight. I will let you in on a little secret. There's a ton of equipment out there that we didn't cover tonight because it's just, there's so much of it. So I want to do a quick little recap on our kits, what we feel is necessary and what's kind of basic. And then I'm going to turn it over to Nick here in a little bit as well and have him talk a little bit about some of his changes in philosophy and an experiment he tried this weekend. All right, so let's go with our absolutely necessary equipment if you're going on an investigation of the paranormal. You've got to have a flashlight. Absolutely necessary. And you need the batteries to go with that. So whatever size flashlight battery you need, be sure you have several of those. Also, take an open mind and a positive attitude. Those three things right there, absolutely necessary. And then if we move into a basic kit, take a camera with you. You never know what you're going to catch, and that can be as simple as your cell phone. Voice recorder. I prefer digital voice recorders that I can leave laying. However, once again, your cell phone will have apps that are appropriate for that. I always recommend a pen and a notebook. You want to be able to take notes and your impressions of what's going on as it's happening, or at least shortly after the investigation ends. And of course, batteries. At this point, you're probably needing a variety of sizes. Make sure you have plenty of those. So that's basically what you need kit-wise to start investigating. At this point, though, I do want to turn it over to Nick Landy. He's going to share a little bit about how he went from being really equipment heavy to some pretty basic stuff. In fact, they actually put into place an experiment this weekend that worked beautifully, and we'll be following it up more in the future. So, Nick, if you would please give us a little idea about what spurred that change in equipment that you used to use that you don't use anymore, and what kind of results are you finding from that?
All right, well, I started off pretty tech heavy. I wanted all the cool gear that I seen on the TV shows and I seen everybody using, because I wanted to catch ghosts. That's what I got into it for in the first place. But as time got on, especially after I met you and Rachel, I kind of started to discover my abilities, or at least my growth of abilities that we discussed previously when we had the one-on-one interview. And I've begun mentoring under Rachel Sosa a lot as far as that goes. So I started to stray away from the technology and more so into the basic necessities. And I have to say that my absolute number one instrument that I use in every investigation is plain and simple myself. It's how I feel in an environment. It's my thoughts, my feelings. I listen to my intuition. I listen to my gut. I listen to my heart, and I go from there. And then I start using some of the basic stuff like recorders, cameras, and so forth. But one of the things that I've gotten into a lot here recently is communication. And with that, dowsing. I originally started using the dowsing rods and sort of transitioned over to using the dowsing pendulum. So the pendulum is always in my kit wherever I go, no matter what. And so this weekend, I decided to conduct an experiment here at the theater with Robert and his wife, while Rachel was actually doing a tarot card session in the main theater. We're in another room of the theater when I decided to do this experiment. I wanted to do this experiment because previously at home, I was sitting there and I was sitting still and quiet, and I decided to take out my pendulum and see if, without words, without talking, if I could simply get the pendulum to move the direction of that I was thinking. So that proved to be successful for me at home.
So you're basically using just your psychic abilities there, correct?
Just my psychic abilities.
Okay.
So I was by myself at home when I did this, and of course I wasn't recording anything. So I was like, okay, I have to do this with people looking so that we can actually see this happen. So while Rachel had a session going on over here, I decided in this other room that we were in to do this experiment. So what I did, I took out the pendulum and I sat there and I held it, but instead of using my thoughts, I decided, well, what if I can use somebody else's thoughts and psychically connect to me and have this pendulum move the direction that was the actual answer to the question. So I had Rob and his wife ask each other yes or no questions that only the other one would know the answer to, and that I definitely would not know the answer to. And I basically was the conduit in between the two of them to see what we could get as far as answers went.
Ooh, that's a very interesting experiment. So how did that go?
I'm trying to remember one of the questions that we did about 6 to 8 different questions. And basically, I would ask my wife a question about something in her life that I didn't know, but I knew that she would have a yes or no answer to. And I just would tell her, whatever the answer to that question is, just think in your mind, yes, 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 or no, 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 whatever the proper answer is, and we'll see if Nick can pick up on that. And so what we decided to do is say, if the pendulum swings forward and back, that's yes. If it swings side to side, that's no. That's all that Nick knew. So I would ask the question. Polly knew the answer in her mind. I didn't know it. She then, theoretically, Nick was either picking up on the answer or Polly was transmitting it to Nick. So that's what needs further investigation, is how that's working. But needless to say, when Polly would ask me a question or I would ask her a question, Nick got every single question right.
Oh, I love it. 100%.
100%. And I am super skeptical. I do not like pendulums. I do not like dowsing rods because of the involuntary muscle reactions. And when the person is asking the questions themselves and holding the device, it's going to go in the direction they want it to go. It's their mind and their muscles doing it. That's my opinion. So this experiment was interesting in that Nick had absolutely no idea what the answer should be, even though he had a 50 chance of guessing it right. He guessed it right every single time out of about 8 questions. So to further the experiment, we're going to need to ask more questions, a larger quantity of questions, and start to switch off the people that are asking the questions of one another to try to determine whether or not he's picking up the question or if it's being sent to him, how that's going to work. So that it was really fascinating. It was pretty fascinating.
Oh, it definitely was. Y'all had several blinds set up there as well. So this was very scientific in... Polly didn't know the questions before you asked. You didn't know the answers to the questions that you were asking your wife. And then Nick, of course, had absolutely no clue whatsoever. I'm curious if the friendship bond may have had an influence on that. So it would be interesting to see that same experiment with basically people off the street. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does, and I've thought about that too, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do it. And it was spur of the moment. It was so spur of the moment. I mean, we were getting toward the end of the night. It was within her last few readings that she had going on for the evening, and I decided, you know what? I've got my pendulum with me. I'm going to take it out. Excuse me, and we're going to see what happens. And Polly and I have known each other for 20 years. Rob and I have known each other probably around 10, 11 years, something like that. So I think that definitely plays into it. The connection that we all share, the psychic connection that we all share.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's like a whole nother rabbit hole episode for me right there.
Right, I had to cut myself off.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, listeners, we're going to leave you hanging on that, but we will come back. We will definitely revisit this experiment and let y'all know how it turns out. We are definitely all about taking those experiments to the next level. And so, hey, stay tuned. You will learn a lot, I guarantee. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We will see you next week.
You are listening to Topic Paranormal with your host, Georgina Holzmeyer, and the Paranormal Brain Trust, Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa. Topic Paranormal covers Paranormal Talk, Paranormal Tales, Paranormal Training, and so much more. Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts.
This episode, copyright 2019 by astronetradio.com. All rights reserved.